Grace and peace to you all this morning. Over the next over the next few minutes, I'm going to be talking about a question that came up for me in this text, which is, what does it mean to be a flock that follows the voice of Jesus? What does it mean to be a flock that follows the voice of Jesus? And so I want to start with a story that a colleague of mine shared. She doesn't remember where she heard it, but I'll share it from her. And she says she heard a story about a group that was traveling in the Holy Land. And the group was on a bus driving from one location to another, as you do when you're on a tour. And as they were driving, they saw a flock of sheep that was being herded towards a building. And they stopped to take some pictures, as you would, that's driving through. And as they were getting off the bus to get ready to take the pictures, they saw that the men who were herding the sheep were being very abusive to them. They were hurting these sheep, hitting them and dragging them along. And everyone was shocked and horrified by this, right? Seeing it. But there was one woman in particular who was just overwrought. She was very sad and crying because her image, the whole image of Jesus for her was as the Good Shepherd, right? That was a central image to her faith. And I know there are some of you who have that central image as well. And so now she was questioning if this was how shepherds treat their sheep. What does that mean for the Good Shepherd image? And then the tour guide came over and said to her, "That's not the shepherd, that's the butcher." And they realized that they had mistaken the butcher for the shepherd. So as we start thinking about this question, what does it mean to be a flock that follows Jesus' voice? We'll start with, how do we know that we're hearing Jesus' voice as a flock or as individuals? And how often, this is really a question for all of us, how often do we mistake someone else's voice for Jesus' voice, whether it's a political leader or if we go beyond this group, maybe a cult leader or even the voice of advertising that's telling us what can make us whole if we just follow that voice. And we know that we don't always know Jesus' voice when we hear it. And we really know that the world doesn't always hear Jesus' voice. But we also hear in John, both in right after this text in the book of John, but in 1 John, that following Jesus will lead us to an abundant life. That is to say, a life that is fulfilling, where we can say we've lived a life of goodness, of mercy, of love, of peace. And so we need to consider, how does Jesus' voice sound different from the voices of the world? Does it look different? Does it feel different from all these voices which are really trying to grab our attention? And so, as we occasionally do, we're going to do a short meditation in this moment of thinking and experiencing what Jesus' voice is for us. So I invite you to sit comfortably, become as comfortable as you can, close your eyes, or look down. Just look down so you're not looking at another person, so that you're kind of in your own space. And I want you to imagine that you're sitting or walking, whatever is more comfortable for you, in a place that is beautiful, a place that you think is beautiful and comforting and peaceful. And I wonder what you see around you in this place. What are the sounds that you hear? Does it have any kind of a fragrant smell? And now as you're comfortable in that place, I want to imagine what it would feel like, what you would see if Jesus walked into this space with you. What does Jesus look like to you in this space? What is he wearing? How long is his hair? What kind of expression does he have as he comes in close to you? And now imagine in this space that Jesus reaches out to your hand. And what does that feel like? Is it strong? Is it gentle? Something in between? What kind of experience is it? And now I want you to take about 30 seconds to hear Jesus speaking to you in that moment. Maybe you'll hear specific words, maybe you'll feel a certain feeling as Jesus is with you, talking to you. So I want you to just take some time now to experience that in your image. And now as you think about that experience, did those words or that experience feel true for you? And what about that experience made it an experience of Jesus? Maybe it was a representation of love or of peace or of strength or of justice, or something completely different than that. Acceptance. But I want you to think about, what is it that made those words Jesus' words for you? And now imagine that you're back to being just you in your beautiful and comfortable space, remembering that experience with Jesus. And now I invite you to slowly come back into this community as you feel comfortable, opening your eyes, rejoining the flock that sits in this space. There's a sense when we open ourselves that there's something different about how Jesus interacts with us than someone on television or even in this room with us. And also we can see pieces of Jesus in everyone we meet. It makes it complicated to understand what Jesus is saying and who Jesus is for us. But we need to come back into that sense of who is Jesus for us and what kinds of words connect with Jesus' message. Now, this piece that we just did together was really a sense of an individual relationship with Jesus, but I started out by talking about the flock, because the individual relationship with Jesus is only a part of the picture. Jesus calls himself the good shepherd for the whole flock, and in this passage he even expands beyond just one flock, right? He talks about the other sheep who aren't a part of this fold. But in the end, it's one flock, one shepherd. So the rest of our time together now, we'll spend on what does it mean to be a flock? a flock that follows Jesus' voice. I think part of a challenge of being a flock, even with people that we know well, is that often we can see ourselves as unlovable, or at least unlovable in some moments. And sometimes we can see others as difficult to love. And yet, in the midst of all of that, we're faced with what can seem like unsurmountable problems in society. And it becomes difficult to see the possibility of a society as being able to come together in love and peace when we ourselves are not always lovable and people we know are not always lovable. But this passage and the message of all the Gospels and in 1 John that we read today, another beautiful passage, is that God's love and peace abide in us and in everyone, and we're all together in this. And so as we think about our flock, we also think about how we find comfort and love in our community with other people, and how we give comfort and love in this community. I know almost everyone that I talk to in this community talks about that experience of being welcomed and cared for in this community. And we need to live into that in order to really build up this flock as a part of Jesus. Because Jesus' voice leads us in truth and love. And it leads us to a place of belonging within this flock and the greater flock. A little flock here. Because we're all one, abiding in this deep love that is of God. We're not going to do another meditation, but I do want to have you think about 3 things about the love in this flock, in this community, in this church congregation, and the larger group of people around us. So I just want you to take a moment to feel the love of God. The love and peace that is present for you in this community. It's all around us. And then to take another moment to feel the love of God and peace in this neighborhood, let's say the Sunset neighborhood, in the city. It's a little harder to feel it in that space, but it's there, right? God's love and peace abide in that whole area. And finally, take a moment to feel that abiding love and peace of God as it spreads throughout the world. It's even harder to see it, I think, there, as we see some of the terrible things happening around the world. And yet, God's love is there, just waiting for our flock, our largest flock, to come together and follow Jesus' words. We're going to close by singing a song. I did not ask to have it put up there because we're almost full. It's a Taizé song that I think many of you know. It's called "Come and Fill Our Hearts with Your Peace." So we'll finish with that intention. It's, if you want to see it, it's on page 528. An invitation to Jesus to enter our hearts, not my heart, but our hearts as a flock. Come and fill our hearts with your peace. And Pastor Tom's going to give us an F sharp to get started, and we'll sing it a cappella 3 times. There it is. Come and fill our hearts with your peace. You alone, oh Lord.